to your father just a moment. That's it. Good.
Them. We saw them.
Okay. That's
What?
Are you ready, Rob?
Okay.
Yeah, I remember when the Depression started. It started, like I say, it started in 1929 in October, I think it was. And we just had gotten married, me and my wife, and we thought later on maybe we caused the Depression by the stock market falling and everything. But then it got a little worse and worse, 29, 30, 31, 32. Long about then, I was working on the WPA, Work Progress Administration. We called it that big railroad, the WP&A. I wrote a song back then. I called it Streamline Talking Blues. I'll play a verse or two of it. Let's see. Now, married life is all right if you don't drink liquor and stay out at night. Work hard all the week and give your wife the pay. Keep the good works going till Judgment Day. Marry young, raise children, and die happy. Now the other night I went to bed. I pulled the cover up over my head. I woke up with a mighty pain. I was lying on the baby's toy train. The baby was bawling, wife howling, home sweet home. Now listen boys, if you want to get rich, get a pick and shovel and dig you a ditch. You'll learn the yard in a couple of days, then get you a job on the WPA. Push buggies, shovel mountains. Now there's nothing like a happy home. Work hard all day and then go home. Sit right down to read the news. Kids hanging on your coat and untying your shoes, rubbing syrup in your eyes. They love Papa. I was down in the hen house the other night. The hens had out the electric lights. I scrambled around, not young as I used to. Grabbed at a hen, but I got a rooster. The feathers was flying, hens cackling. I had stole sweet Papa. But I tell you though, the songs that they like best, though, that we sung back then. Here's a couple of them that they really like, and we had to sing these at nearly every meeting we had. When it's springtime in the Rockies, I'll be coming back to you. Little sweetheart of the mountain, with your bonny eyes so blue. Once again I'll say I love you, while the birds sing all the day. When it's springtime in the Rockies far away, my wild Irish rose, the sweetest flower that grows. You may search everywhere, but there's none can compare with my wild Irish rose, my wild Irish rose, the sweetest flower that grows. And someday for my sake she may let me take a bloom from my wild Irish rose.
talking about the son of fiddling John Carson's, Horace, who was a leader of the strike. Could you talk about him? Just mention him.
Yeah, Horace, Horace Carson was. I remember him very much. He was well liked around there in Cabbagetown. They nicknamed him the mayor of Cabbagetown because everything that went on, he was right behind it, behind Cabbagetown, boy. I don't care what it was. But old Horace, he was right in there with every meeting, and Horace stuttered, you know. He couldn't talk very much, but he'd stutter. Well, his daddy did too. But he would get up there, you know, and start telling about it, you know, and he'd get them all to laugh, and he'd say, I worked in the mill down to the boss named so-and-so, and here's a fella. And he'd get them all tickled, you know. Old Horace would, but he backed them right on up in during all this strike.
How did they eat during the strike?
Very little. Well, I tell you, there was soup lines and bread lines around, see, and you get in one of them. They shared the food. If people had it, you know, they shared it. And you could get, you could go to different places and get food, you know, get soup and bread and things of that nature. And they give out, I think government give out beef, canned beef, you know. Man, they eat that canned beef, fried, boiled, stewed, and you name it. That canned beef that they had. They got telling a joke about that canned beef. Said the reason they got so many out west there was so many cows dying till they canned it. That wasn't so, but they did get that tale out. But
You were telling us before, and I just want you to repeat it, about the mills preferring people from the mountains rather than hiring people from the city.
Yeah, you could go in full and bag. Say a city man go in, I'd been working somewhere else, and ask for a job. Maybe he wouldn't get it. But a man come right behind him, say, where you from? Say, I come from up in Blue Ridge Mountains. Okay, he'd start writing him up. He'd write up them mountain people, because they found out one thing about them. They'd been used to working from sun up till sundown, you know, in the country with no wages like they're getting there. There was good wages for the farmers, for the mountain people. They never had made no money like that. And some of them learned to weave and spin, and they did make pretty good. Some of them $25, $30 a week. And so they didn't want to, actually they didn't want to strike, because they was doing well. They had bought the stuff, you know, and furniture to pay on. And during that time, people that owed debts, there's one good thing about it. They waited on them till they went back to work before they got after them about paying, you know, the bills on, furniture and so forth, so on. But it was. I've missed a lot of meals. Used to back then when you went to the doctor, you know, it wasn't what have you eat made you sick, it's when did you eat? And he says, I tell you what you got the missed meal colic. Didn't eat much, but No, go ahead.
Could you talk about race and the mills?
Well, I tell you, there wasn't much race down there. Back then, you know, there was very much hatred for the blacks and Jews and Catholic people. And that was one thing that was really, really bad. But there was Jews that run, I know of 3 Jews that run stores right up and down Carroll Street, and they got as much trade as the Gentile people trading. For one reason, them Jews, they started giving them credit, you know. They'd give them credit from one week to the next. And sometimes they'd leave and wouldn't pay the debt. But when they come back and went to work, they'd give them more credit if they wanted to. you know, and most of them didn't have to have credit because they couldn't pay from one meal to the next. But there was some rough times out there that you didn't eat for a good while. I know I had some of them. I'll tell you what we done there during the worst part of the strike. I started peddling. It was hard to sell stuff too, see, during the Depression. And we would go into the what's called the produce row and buy a big sack of butter beans. We call them lima beans, you know, you probably know them, man. And we'd come home, take them home. Me and my brother, his wife, my wife, would shell those butter beans up until about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And then me and him would put them in little baskets and go out and sell them that day. Go back and get another big sack, come home, repeat the same thing over and over. I never got so tired of shelling beans, boy, my hands got sore, but had to do it. That was just one of the hardships of it. And we could, the beans sold pretty good, shelled.
Could you go back and talk about black and white relations?
Yeah, well, I tell you, they wasn't good at all. The colored women lived on the other side of the mill across Decatur Street. They would come over there and get the washing clothes for people that worked in the mill, you know, and they'd tote them home in big sacks, carry them in big sacks. They would wash them, dry them, and iron them, and bring them back on Saturday. Big load like that for $1. But they didn't, they was a bunch of mean boys and all teenagers, whites, in Cabbagetown. They didn't allow no blacks down there. Every time they'd catch them down there, they'd rock them in, you know. Throw rocks at them, just run them till they got back across the railroad. But they got it back on us. We had to, when we went to school, we had to pass right through their place, see, where they was going to school, and man, they would rock us, so it was a rock and roll. It rocked you down, you'd roll over. It worked pretty well both ways, but we had some terrible knife, and we had what they call flip slingshots, and some of them had pistols. It'd come through what we call a rental town then, and it was rough. It was really rough.
Were there any blacks working in the mills?
Sweepers. Few sweepers. Very few sweepers. Just the menial job, you know, a job that nobody else wanted. Well, they had it. Yeah, they didn't have none. That was really a shame that they couldn't. Later on, they got jobs in there and done just as well as the white people did with them.
Could you talk about religion and the mill village?
Well, all the country music, Cabbagetown, and the mill was all religion was mixed in with it, see. All country musicians, we'd play sacred songs, you know, gospel songs and all. They do. But it played a great part in the of the people lived there, and they come from, one of them had come from up in the mountain, see, was either, where I lived up in the mountain there wasn't but 2 churches, see, up there. And that's where most of them had come down. There was either Methodist or Baptist. And this little story fits in with it. And I remember down a country road, there was a Baptist church sitting here on this side of the little road, and a Methodist church sitting here. And sometime a Methodist, you know, they'd fall out with the Methodists, and they'd come over and join the Baptist. Sometime a Baptist get out with them, he'd go over and join the Methodist. But I noticed, I was in the Baptist church, and I noticed if they come over, they had to be baptized, you know, the Methodists did, to join the Baptist. But I noticed something strange about our preacher. When he baptized them Methodists, he held them under the water longer than he did us. but anyhow, they'd start singing, well, Baptist church on this side, Methodist on this side. And every night they'd start singing about the same time. And the Methodists start singing, will there be any stars in my crown? And the Baptists singing, no, not one. But anyhow, they come on down, and most of them was of the Baptists and Methodists, you know. And they was good people, but they was hard workers. And
Did the churches take any interest in the strike or the working conditions?
Not to the best of my knowledge. Only the people that belonged to the church. The leaders, I don't think did. Best of my knowledge, they didn't take much part in the strike. But everyone that worked in the mill though belonged to some church. There was 3 churches down there. One was a Baptist, and they had a Methodist and Pentecostal, and that's about what they was made of.
Talk about Ku Klux.
Oh, Ku Klux. I remember they used to march up and down there, and they showed that picture over there one time at the theater, Fairview Theater, not far from Cabbagetown on Memorial Drive. And they showed that birth of the nation, and I never seen the like of bed sheets in all of my life with holes in them. But up and down Carroll Street, most of them store owners, you know, and all belonged to the Ku Klux. And not only that, but there was lawyers, judges, police, and all that belonged to the Ku Klux. And I remember they had a word back then that I was just a kid, but we'd meet one another, you know, with a code, you know, and then one of the words was Ayek, and the other one was Akaya. And I said, now that can't be, that's gotta be something. That ain't my language. But there was one old man that run a furniture store down there. Some of them said, you know, he thought he was a Ku Klux. And so they was gonna have a march that day over at that theater, you know, and I said, I'm gonna see if he is. I'm gonna find out if he's a Ku Klux. And I looked at the shoes he was wearing, see, they was all different from anybody else's. And I went over there that day, and as they marched down by the theater, you know, I was looking at every one of them feet, just a boy, you know. There he come, them shoes. Yep, that's Jonas Pittman. I went back down Carroll Street telling every one of them Jonas Pittman was a Ku Klux. But they'd march out Stone Mountain and build a fiery cross, you know, and scare black children and them. And I didn't like that. I was just a boy, but I seen there was something definitely wrong with that. But and they'd have the big meeting there on Stone Mountain. But boy, later on it started banning out. Everybody started falling out, especially the upper class people, you know. And I said no. Later on they wanted me to join. I said no.
Well, now the Elses were Jews.
Yeah.
Could you talk about that in relationship to what people thought of it?
Well, naturally they had to speak and talk pretty good of them. That was their bosses, you know. Jake Elsey. Jake Elsey was, he seemed to be a pretty good man, but he just wouldn't, I don't know, he just didn't treat the people right as far as, they made a lot of money in that cotton mill, you know, and he didn't pay them right. But they did have a ball team down there, though. He didn't allow them to fence the ball team in until he died. As long as he lived, he wouldn't let them fence it in. Quick as he fenced it in, quick as he died, they fenced it in and started charging to get in. But they had ball players. They'd hire anybody could play ball. Somebody else, if he couldn't run his job, somebody else had to run it. Yeah, they said, I know my brother-in-law said, listen, I'm keeping up this fella's job here. He said, well, I know he's a ball player, but says, we got to keep him. So you just got to keep his job up if you want to work. So he had to keep that ball player's job up. But the Elses, they kept pretty quiet. They wasn't much into the strike. You didn't see none of them around, but just the bosses, from the superintendent on down.
Could you talk about the women and the mills and the strike?
The women? Well, they was, the women was for it. There's most of the women, boy, was the one that kept it really going, because they talked it up more than the men did. Because you get a woman, excuse me, y'all, you get a woman riled up, and they'll really tell you what they think about it. And they'd get up at these meetings and tell how hard it was in the mill and why they made them do and all of that, and point them out, even standing there, there stands the old boss right over there, and would make them do so and so. They'd speak out, but the men was a little more shy about that, But they was in there. The women was in there striking.
Now, you told us that the people who led the strike had to leave. Could you just start telling about that whole story? So I didn't know that.
Yeah. You mean had to leave the mill? Yeah. Yeah, the ones that was in the strike, especially the leaders, they did have to leave. When they started hiring them back, they'd come up to the office desk, and you'd give them the name, they'd look on the list. If you was on the list, it was goodbye Charlie. See? They wouldn't hire you back. They had on there whatever you done, all the things you'd said, and they kept it down. I remember when you left Fulton Bag Mill, you had to give a reason for leaving, see? And there was this one man left, he quit, and he went down to the office to sign out. Mr. Florence, he had the palsy, and he'd write and never look up, just write and answer questions. And he answered, said, "Why are you leaving?" He said, "Well, I tell you, Mr. Florence, there's the mill's on the wrong side of the street." He said, "Okay." He wrote it down. 20 years later, that man come back, went in the office, and asked Mr. Florence for a job. Mr. Florence looked up and said, "I'm sorry," says, "the mill's still on the same side of the street it was on when you left." They kept stuff. That old man had a memory like an elephant. Yeah, it was good times and bad times. It was something else, though.
Okay, let's hold it just a moment. Okay, when we will talk with a lot of people in Cabbagetown, they've told us that all of the strikers, the whole business was something dreamed up by outsiders, and it had nothing to do with the people who actually live in Cabbagetown. Just suppose you heard that, how would you respond?
I'd say that's not so. Now, there was, ones that come along first, and was talking to the people about didn't they want to make better wages, didn't they want to have a better living, and it come down from South North Carolina, see. What do you call them when they come in first? I forget it now, but anyhow, the leaders they come in, they talked about it. You have to in order to get a strike to going, or why would you strike? And so they'd come in and ask them all about it, and most every one said, "Yeah, we'd like to make more money." They said, "Well, you'll never make it unless we unionize. So you got to come together and everybody unionize, and then we'll have a force to force them to pay a good wages that you can live on." And so that's how it happened. And they come in.
Now, the Roosevelt, the New Deal had come in. Could you talk about what happened when the New Deal came in Roosevelt?
Well, when he come in, President Roosevelt, the first thing he done was started the, I forget now what you call it, for young men, unmarried men, just living at home, civilian camp we called it. And he got them jobs in the civilian camps in different parts of the country working, you know, and they could send money home to their mothers, them that lived with their mothers. He done that. He started that, and that was got the thing to rolling back to progress. And then he started the, which I mentioned a while ago, the Work Progress Administration for the married men and women, see, and that got them all started back to work. And that was a good thing. I don't see in no way they could ever pull out of that except them two things that he done. And he froze the money on the banks, and so that was really good. He started back, and then the people began to eat better, you know, and have food, and have more.
You remember what happened when the hours got cut from 12 to 8?
Oh, there was gladness, boy. They was glad because they was working them people to death. 12 hours a day, from 6 till 6. And man, when they cut it back to 8 hours, we thought heaven had broke loose. Had a little free time, you know, for in the evening, the afternoon. And then, see, they just had, at that time, I think they just had one shift from 6 till 6. Then they started one then from 6 till 6 in the morning. Then when they started the 8 hours, they started up 3 shifts. And that was pretty good. People would work 8 hours, you know, and had a little time for recreation. But I don't think that was no goodness of the mill that done that. That probably come through legislation, no doubt.
Okay, I think that'll be it for now. Is there anything that you have on your mind that you'd like to tell us about Cabbagetown and the strike?
Well, I don't know. If we had it had it do over again, it'd be the same way. 'Cause I agree that they did need a strike, but I don't know really what happened. Somehow or another they pulled some strings, the companies, and supported that strike. And they never did reap no benefits from it. But I think
I'm sorry, we missed the clock, so I'm going to get you to just start over and say that same thing again, because that's too good a statement to miss.
It's got to go 12 times, too.
Just to,
Yeah.
what was I talking about?
He's got to get his train of thought back now.
okay.
Have to get back to what I was thinking about, the strike. Yeah, like I say, if I had it to do over, would do the same thing. But it's a sad case, though, that after all of that strike and all of the time they was out, all of the hunger and the suffering that went on, it never did pay off. Never did pay off. And I think is this way, they started opening up, was going to hire them back, see. And they started, a lot of them one by one, it wasn't too much for the strike, started oozing back into the cotton mill, see. They knew they had them when that started. So like sheep, when that started, one would follow another, another would follow another. And even them then, it was really for the strike and say, well, we're going to have to get this line, we ain't got nowhere this way. So we got to get in the line, see if we can go back and get our jobs back. And that was a sad thing. They had to go back under the same conditions.
Got it. That's exactly what I wanted. We've got a song for that. It will break your heart.
You do my good zoom out shot.
Humbling Back in the Mills.
Huh?
Somebody's written a song called, which we're planning to use, called "Gotta Go Humbling Back in the Mills."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And your statement is going to tie right into